Hello everyone, I've been getting into chess lately and I just had a delightful game against a Mr. Bobfish chess. If you've played any chess or heard the word chess spoken out loud on this side of the world, you probably know what that's referencing. I started with d4. I'm still not certain if I want to go d4 or e4 for my general opening repertoire. I'll probably end up picking up both, but so far I've been enjoying more positional games. We've got b6, c4, and e6, emblematic of the English defense. Or so I'm told. I haven't actually looked into this opening very far, and as you'll see from this line if you're familiar with it, I'm probably not very familiar with it, and my opponent might not be very familiar with it. I'll have to look into it. But we have knight c3, bishop b7, f3, d5. So f3, I wanted to, from the earliest point possible, start denying my opponent f squares. My logic was from here, playing pawn to e4 makes me vulnerable to bishop to b4 and such shenanigans. So I wanted to start with pawn to f4, or pawn to f3 to set up for pawn to e4. He recognized this and immediately went pawn d5. What was my logic here? My response was just to go for e4. Whichever pawn he takes, I get to hold on to the center because I have the knight anyway. So I felt fine with any continuation for this, and you know, I think it was actually Kasparov who helped figure out the logic for queen c2 and how it helps e4. And of course, if he takes on c4, I can just capture with the bishop to foul it big net. He goes for the pin. I take, because taking with the c-pawn lets it be that if he takes my knight, I actually get my c-pawn back and I don't have any doubling, or I'm just winning extra pawns, or both. Bishop takes on c3. I take with the pawn. He takes back. And I cement the pawn structure. Taking on d5 here risks this move, and I've lost all control of white squares for the rest of the game. Will it continue properly? Yes, it will. e5, he goes knight d7 here. I recognize now that this move is a way to keep the bishop in control of this line while also developing his knight, but honestly, given that he's already given up control because he put the pawn on d5, he could have put it on c6. But he went for knight to d7, and I'm actually still debating that. Like, it's open to pawn pushes later in the game. It can't line up with the knight on f6 because the knight can't go to f6 because the pawn on e5. I develop my bishop. I don't want to use this pin because I don't want to be pushed back. I want it just in a comfortable square, but I don't want it on e2. I'm not sure if that's a correct judgment though, but this is the longest diagonal I'd have available to me. Knight to e7, which of course is the only place he can develop his knight besides h6, which is a bad idea. I go knight e2 here. I'm expecting him for the rest of the game. That's why I didn't want to go that's why I didn't want to go bishop e2, because I wanted to be able to put my knight on e2 because I can't put it on f3. I expected him for the rest of the game here to be trying to castle on the right side, or on his king side, but we see that doesn't happen. He goes f6, I go f4 to trade my f6 pawn for his f4 pawn. He moves past and has the consequence that he just gave me a passed pawn. Now currently pushing pawn e6, excuse me, has the risk of just knight here, and I don't have any move that can defend it. So that would be just losing a pawn. But that line is available for me later in the game since it is passed. I castle here. We see pawn to g6. He stabilized his pawn structure, and this should have telegraphed to me that he wasn't planning on castling here, but I wasn't so sure. Bishop d2. Develop my last bishop and allow my bottom line to be connected. My other logic was from this position, I looked at the position and I thought I'm very spread out. I only have like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bishop moves, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 queen moves, 1, 2, 3 rook moves, 1 other rook move. This bishop is limited, and I'm very spread out, and I'm safer. So if we're going by the best move algorithm, I'm winning on safety, I'm losing on tempo, we're even on material. Arguably, I'm actually better in material because I traded a center pawn for a side pawn. And I'm winning on space, and that's all of the signs of Petrosian. And there's one other measurement, which is just how much movement you have, and Yeah, I have slightly more movement just because of the pawn, but everything else reads to Petrosian. And so I go for bishop d2, which is, in my eyes, a move that helps defend these two pawns against any attacks, because he'd want to reposition his knights to over here or to over here to try to bully these pawns, because they're my weak points. And the bishop will keep them safe. This knight move is, of course, a move to reposition, but it also telegraphs he doesn't intend to castle there. And he's moving over to this side of the board to start to bully. I actually, because I saw this move, that's why I went for h3 to stop knight to h6 followed by g4, but he ended up going there anyway. Here I start repositioning my knight to make use of weaknesses on this side of the map. This is a weak pawn. In my calculation, this pawn is weak if I can get extra pressure on it. But I think more so than anything is that there's no other great squares for this knight, because moving this knight to a g6, there's no follow-up anywhere. My knight is completely contained. Maybe I can go h1, g. Okay, so there is a continuation, but it involves going h1, f3, pushing h4, going to h3, and then going to g5. But this path is better since this part is just open. As far as I'm concerned, it takes far fewer turns. We see knight to f8. He's trying to bring his other knight into this. More importantly, because I've moved my knight out of the way, I can now move my rook to e1 and push this past pawn. I take a quick check. Why did I check here? Oh, my logic was that this white bishop is actually completely irrelevant to me, because all of these pawns are on white squares. This bishop is on a white square. So my logic was, for the foreseeable future, I'm not going to be able to make much use of this bishop, because it's a closed position where my opponent has control of white squares and has a white shadowed bishop. So my logic is, can I trade away this white bishop? Can I replace it for a piece he wants to use, such as this knight, which is going to be good in a closed position, this bishop, which he can't actually trade it right now. But no, he moves the pawn forward, instead creates a new weakness here. So I move my bishop back, prepared in case he tries to back it up. He moves his queen over to here. I don't know why he moved his queen to c7. Besides keeping this defense safe, at least I didn't at the time, but later on I discovered it's because he did in fact want a castle kingside. Yes, here I moved my knight from c1 to d3, planning for a b4 attack on this pawn, which can also redirect to an attack on this pawn if need be. Bishop to b3 and knight on the same square. Here he castled kingside, here he castled queenside, which is a surprise to me, but it ends up being that this is still a good piece position for me. I go rook e1, now preparing to push my passed pawn. He goes rook e8, so making it so if I push my pawn here, I'll just lose because he has the knight blocking the square. Here I redirect my bishop, planning to go from d2 all the way to e1, or a3, excuse me, not e1, my rook's on e1. And here he immediately goes knight to e6. If there's a passed pawn, the best piece to block it with is a knight. Thankfully, all of my other pieces aren't hanging. I move my bishop here anyway because I do eventually want to make use of this square, especially if I can kick this with a white bishop at some point, or a knight. But regardless, it's a nice square for now when I would win any pawn trades. Here the game got a bit tactical. He tried to push this pawn and I didn't want to trade it at all, because that opens up a nearly passed pawn for him, that opens up a lot of very comfortable avenues for him. So instead I wanted to play to make plays that were higher enough tempo that he didn't have time to capture the pawn. Instead he backs up the knight. The knight is now being defended by the queen. This is the only... No, this was, I think, a natural move here. how did I try to punish this? I didn't try to punish this directly yet. I instead refocused onto this side of the board. Knight captured here was a very powerful move for him. At this point I have to retreat my queen. I move to here to... Do I have any other squares to go to? I can't go to here. D1 is bad. Yeah, this is actually my only square. This and D1. And this felt better than D1. Here he pushes my bishop back. I'm push it back to here so I can redirect against this weak pawn, which I can capture with checks now that he's opened up his position. Now that he's opening up his position, it's working really well for me to focus on his... to focus on my bishop. Since the position was closed, it was better for me to focus on my knight. He goes knight h6, planning shenanigans, honestly. Here this move took me, I think, how long to think of? I spent a solid minute or so on this move. My logic was that if he takes on h3, I can catch him in a bit of a pin with h2, or not a pin, but his knight's dead if I go h2, because he has no legal squares to go to that I can't capture on. And then the argument was, well, what if he goes knight to g4? Well, if he goes knight to g4, I can just take it. And he can't from g3 or g4 go to a place that pins f3 and h3 or forks it. But that was my miscalculation, because here he actually went pawn to g4, and here here it's not so good for me. Actually, what's his answer to this? Takes. Wait. I think that might have actually been better. I think I may have misplayed this. But my initial response was moving my queen over to this file to allow for pushing it. But I should have just taken it with the bishop. I think I considered that move, but I didn't want to lose it. But it got me everything I would have wanted. That's interesting. Here he moves his rook to e6, and now I have even fewer options for capturing the f5 pawn, because my queen isn't on the same file anymore. I redirect my knight from that side of the board so I can bring it over to here. He pulls his knight away. Oh no, that was actually completely misreading. My bad. I moved my knight from here to get onto this square so I can attack this rook, so I can make it leave. That succeeds. This knight succeeds also in blocking, in protecting this rook. And at this point I was actually very worried that I'd lost, because this knight can now leave with check and then do whatever it wants. So I take it on upon myself to make the fastest play I can, and my opponent blunders spectacularly. Here I take the rook, because now when my opponent takes it with a knight, I can check, take the queen, he takes, I check, bringing in my other bishop, he takes the pawn, or I take the pawn, he takes the bishop, I take the knight, and that's effectively a trade, leaving me up a rook, or not a rook, up a rook for a piece. And did I just even out the pawns? Yes, I did. So I got the 2 pawns I'd lost earlier in the game back when I decided to ignore the push so that I could maintain my structure, and then I ended up going up a rook because he went king to d1. But there was a much earlier point in the game where I could have gotten a significant value if I had checked here and won that pawn back and harassed this piece. And of course if he just moves his king there, I can always go bishop to here. Yeah. Instead of moving my queen, so I can remove the check that way. At that point the knight would still have no escape. Yeah, that was the much better play. After this point, the game just goes downhill for him. I'm actually, most of the rest of the game is just repositioning based on this knight. This move felt rather smart because that move didn't feel rather smart. This move felt smart because it avoids being in a position where this knight can ever check me. And this square is defended, so he can't go for this fork. This square is defended, so he can't go for this fork. There's not a lot of ways for him to get to another square that lets him get to this fork. This is, I think, the only other close by-ish square that he can get to a fork from, but he has to go. Jeez, I don't even know. Yeah, it's not a straightforward path. But the rest of the game is minor repositioning. I attack his bishop here. He puts it back so he can attack his rook. I attack his rook, he moves his knight. Now I attack the knight here. There was a specific move I was afraid of here, I think. No, there wasn't. That's slightly later. Check to put the king away. I attack the knight, and he blunders. Yep. You're supposed to defend this this way. That way, he wouldn't have, like, I promote, he takes, and I take. But instead he went this way, which effectively means that the knight is hanging because now I get a queen instead of a rook. And the rest of the game is just 2 moves until checkmate. And that was the game. This was more involved and more interesting than most other games I've played. And I'll have to keep in mind for this position. After this, I did have this fantastic check, followed by that move. Which I think is a much, much better position for me than what I got stuck in. Because my opponent did have the fantastic problem here that if he just defended this way, I don't really have any good moves. I could still threaten his queen, but I'm not getting rid of the knight. I could check him again. Yeah, there's no really great ways to survive the shenanigans here, because if I check him again, he just runs away, and then whatever I do, let's say I go here, he can just check, and this knight is free, effectively losing me a knight that I had won. Yeah, so I made a mistake of not taking advantage of a very opportune check, and he made the mistake of going king to d8. And this is the result. Thank you for watching my game.